Yeah, it's basically wishful thinking on the level of no, guys, seriously, they're gonna decanonize the sequel trilogy. Just you watch.
Yeah, yeah,
It occurs to me that we're kind of seeing what that would look like in the public eye with the Flash, because that was originally made to decanonize the Snyderverse, more or less,
yeah,
and just how
yeah.
much interest there is in it.
Hmm. Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there.
Hmm.
So, boy, that actually took longer to discuss than I was expecting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we kind of went off on a couple of tangents there.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, Daniel, I think it would be fair to say that we're a couple of nerds.
Yes.
And we're nerds who have like very particular, or who have franchises that have been with us since we were children, if so, or since our teens.
Yeah.
But also in that time, there have been plenty of TV shows and movies and things where we enjoyed them, but we didn't like stick around with them.
Yeah.
So, so the thought today was, let's kind of talk about what our forever franchises are and what we think about them that might have been like what made them like put the meat hooks deep in us.
Yeah. So, should I start or?
Go ahead. I've been blabbing
Okay.
enough.
Um, well, the first franchise that comes to my mind is Star Trek.
Knew it. Should have put money on it.
Yeah. So I've been watching Star Trek since I was very young, like three or 4 years old.
Mhm.
Um, got into it with the movies, and then started watching the old television series, and then right around that time was when the Next Generation premiered on TV.
Mhm.
And I think I think what drew me into it was just when I was really little, it's probably the colorful characters,
Mhm.
and just the adventure aspect of it.
I mean, why am I still having you on the secondary monitor? Back on the primary monitor, so I
Uh,
could actually look at you in the eye rather than. I, that's one thing I noticed when I watch the show afterwards is that I look like I'm disinterested. No, I'm looking right at Daniel. Just Daniel's on my screen over here.
yeah. No, you're not like Johnny Carson, who's always looking around. um, but yeah, and I think it was just, especially the original TV show was fun. It had a yeah, Chingus, shut up, Wesley. I swear, if I ever see Will Wheaton in person, I'm going to say that to him.
Oh, I'm sure that he's. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but and then I think, and I stuck with it as I got older because of the storytelling, because of the characters, and and especially when the universe expanded, when they started expanding it, not just with TNG, but with DS9. Less so with Voyager. I wasn't really a fan of Voyager. Um, but then with Enterprise, I just I enjoyed the not so much the cultural commentary that they would do. Although
Mhm.
that was I didn't mind that. I some of that
That's
was
in
good.
Star Trek's DNA too.
Yeah, it is. But for me, it was always the adventure aspect of it, and the boldly going where no man has gone before.
It occurs to me that so I would say, would it be fair to say that we've had two Star Trek series that have really stuck in the public consciousness? Like
Uh,
it's not like they're like Paramount Plus is chomping at the bit to make Star Trek Janeway.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Well, I mean, which one are you referring? Which two are you referring to?
Original and the Next Generation.
Okay. Yeah, I would. Yeah, those were probably two the two most well known series.
Also noteworthy that Seven of Nine is the one they brought into Picard because
Yeah,
that was the
yeah,
one anybody remembered from Voyager. Most likely for okay, so like a prurient reasons that she would stick in people's minds, but also like the most interesting character on that show.
right. Yeah. Um, and although I will say, DS9 got a bit of a surge in popularity in the last few years, especially when it was on Netflix. People were actually going back to that, even although I liked it from the very beginning.
You, yes, yes, Mr. Hipster. We know you lived in Austin for a bit. The
Yeah,
virus is in you.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Nolan Ninja says Deep Space Nine is the third. Yeah, it's the bronze medal for series popularity.
yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, yeah, they're not there. Yeah, there isn't a lot of chopping at the bit for Star Trek Janeway or Star Trek Archer or
Star Trek
anything.
Bakula.
Yeah, Star Trek Bacula. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Now, I think part of that could be, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, I know that I used to watch Voyager and what I watched of Enterprise on UPN,
Hmm.
which was Paramount's attempt at a network that was always a visual failure.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas I remember DS9 was on Fox where I was at.
DS9. So TNG and DS9 were both sold into first run syndication.
Right. So that's what I mean. Like they were widely available,
Right.
while Voy is that almost like an early version of the streaming wars, where you take something that's popular because everyone can access it no matter where they are in the country. And boy, if you don't have UPN or have an interest in watching UPN, you're not going to stumble across those two Star Trek shows.
Yeah, yeah. And those two shows, well, as Voyager especially, that was the flagship show for that network.
Yep.
Yeah.
It also occurs to me that so speaking as like somebody who I know Star Trek, but I'm like a not lukewarm because I usually enjoy it when I watch it, but it's not something I seek out. It's
Hmm.
it's like a step above pineapple on pizza to me. By which I mean I am at this point mostly neutral to pineapple on pizza. I've learned to tolerate it, but I wouldn't order it for myself. But if somebody like that's all that was there, I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
It is like several. It is steps above that. Like if somebody provided it to me, I will watch it, but I don't go seeking it out myself.
Right. Yeah.
But what I remember from watching it as a kid is that I always liked Next Generation had Mr. Worf and Data, who were both very easy characters to understand and latch onto.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say they were probably the two most popular on the show.
And of course, Geordi was the Reading Rainbow guy. So as a kid, I liked that fact.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was always funny when I was a kid in school, and we'd watch Reading Rainbow, and he would come on. I'd be like, "It's Jordy." Oh, you.
Damn it! Sorry, my screen went completely black there for a second. So
Oh, okay.
um, let's see, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, so it occurs to me, and of course, with the original series, you had the holy trinity of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Hmm.
There does seem to be something about having like a main three that seems to help. Where like, from what I've seen of DS9, would it be say it's more of like an ensemble show?
Oh yeah,
Like there
yeah.
isn't there aren't three main characters, for lack of a better term, that I can think of.
No, it was no. You're right. It was very much an ensemble cast, and a diverse one too.
Now, Daniel, diversity didn't exist until 2015. That
Oh, right. Of course, I forgot. It didn't exist in 1993.
absolutely not. Um, and I think they kind of tried to do that again and it actually Voyager was also kind of more of an ensemble.
Hmm.
Maybe they pretended that no, no, it was more of an ensemble because while Neelix was the Jar Jar Binks of Star Trek, he wasn't as super important as Spock or McCoy or Data or
Yeah, he was kind of the mascot of the show.
yeah, for worse and worse.
Yeah.
I think they tried to get back into having a main three in Enterprise with Bakula, T'Pol, and Tucker.
Tucker, yeah. Trip, yeah.
Trip, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, or 1966, yeah.
So that so yes, I think that one of the things we find there is that it can be helpful to have the wider audience appreciate you. To
Mhm.
have like you kind of know who the main three are,
Right.
or you know who your main cast is, and they're like, you have beloved secondary characters who fill in things, like say Mr. Scott.
Mm.
What do you want to bet that he was some kid's introduction to the Scottish accent?
Probably, yeah. And yeah, the same with Chekhov and the Russian accent.
Nuclear Wessels.
Clear whistle.
Um, now, were you into like the larger Star Trek stuff? Like, were you like? I know they've had novels and the odd video game, and
I didn't really read very many of the novels, but I definitely played a lot of the video games.
so I've not really heard much about them. Which one would you say is like was your favorite?
Um, well, I would say I had a couple. I really liked God, what was it? It was kind of it was a puzzle game. It was kind of like Myst. I can't remember the
Mm.
name of it. Um,
It's like a early CGI puzzle game.
right, yeah, and it had the draw with that game was that the entire cast from the show was in that from TNG was in that
Hmm.
game. I believe it or not, I really like the Elite Force games.
Oh,
Uh,
those Doom-ish games or
yeah,
Quake-ish games.
yeah, they were FPS games. Yeah, the first one I think was the Doom 3 engine. And I don't know about the second one. I actually like the second one better than the first one because the second one you were on the Enterprise E instead of on the Voyager.
An immediate step up.
Yes.
So, so it sounds like having secondary media available to hit your interests was like a key part of, it gives you something to do while you wait for new episodes.
Right. Yeah. And I had all the action figures too, and I had all the toys and everything. So
Yeah, it's like so. Star Trek is different than like being a TV show. Star Trek is a bit different than say Star Wars, and
mhm,
so I think that's a mutual one for both of us.
yeah.
Because like even when there were six movies, as there were by the time I was a young adult, it's not like you would necessarily watch them over and over and over again. But at that
Right.
time, there was like constant Star Wars video game releases.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you had like Shadows of the Empire, you had the Dark Forces.
Hmm.
Yeah.
My screen went out again, but I think it's just my monitor's misbehaving.
Oh, okay.
So if I suddenly cut out and the show ends, that's why.
Yeah, you got yeah. Yeah, and then trying to think of what was the I'm trying to think of another game, but yeah, like there was a barrage of them, like all the yeah, the Starfighter. Thank you, Ninja.
Yeah,
The
oh man,
Starfighter
those
games.
Tie Fighter and X-wing games. Those are
Right,
my
yeah.
jam.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Um, let's see. Um, so for Star Wars, I definitely was into the novels, and arguably I was a bigger fan of the novels than the actual movies themselves, just
Mm,
because I spent so much more time reading them because they were available.
yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
for me with Star Wars, I mean, yeah, I've seen the movies like a bunch of times, and I can't say I was really that much into the novels. I couldn't really. Yeah, and the problem I have with Star Wars, like I love Star Wars. Don't get me wrong. Like, but but like you, I kind of like. not as big. Kind of the way you were with Star Trek, not as big of a, not as into it.
Hmm.
Um, because I really like. I mean, if you ask me, like the Star Trek races, all the different races, like I could probably tell you, like I could tell you like a bunch of them. If you ask me to name like a whole bunch of Star Wars ones, I'll be like, "Duh."
Oh, you like Star Wars, huh? Name every star.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where like with the Star Wars novels, they did a decent job of fleshing out the universe. There are also comics you could read, and of course the toys. Got to have the toys.
Oh yeah. The toys sold uh, gross more or had higher revenue than the movies, or twice as much. Yeah, twice as much as the movies.
Right. Of course, it's the unfair thing where the movies you just sell them to you're just selling them to TV or on VHS or whatever at the time. But the
Yeah.
toys, yeah, if you want a whole set of them, you're dropping a couple hundred. Es-
Oh yeah.
Especially because for those '90s toys, they were, as I understand, just redos, like mild redos of the '70s molds they already had, '70s '80s molds they already had. Which
Yeah.
that's boy, that's to get to sell a toy twice. That's like the dream
Uh,
for Hasbro or Kenner or whoever. No, Kenner.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Kenner, and then Kenner, then Hasbro. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that so I think that for like the things that really sink into you, it's a world where like there's like a lot of detail for you to absorb. But did you ever have any of the Star Trek manuals or like technical readouts or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was me with Star Wars. Like I know stupid amounts of details about some of the warships from the Star Wars novels, because and the actual movies too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know what a skip ray blast boat is. No one should know what a skip ray blast boat is. Also, if anybody makes a comment, my screens have gone completely dead now, so I don't know what's going on here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, both my monitors are dead. So either the HDMI feeds on my laptop have failed, or something is wrong with my power supply.
Oh, well,
S-
you're still coming through. We can still hear
Okay.
you and see you. So
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. The camera is still lit up here, but if
yeah.
somebody says something to me in the chat and I don't respond, that's why. I'm
Okay.
completely flying blind here.
I'll say something if yeah, anything comes up.
Uh, but yeah, so it's like it's interesting where people are. It's kind of like you as a writer, you get to double dip because you have to make up these details so that the universe is consistent as you're writing it. But if it becomes popular and you can you know, come out with a technical manual that has all the details you've assembled, that's free money.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Chenga says, "I oh, your Star Wars stuff. Then tell me, what is Jar Jar Binks's real Sith identity?"
Jar Jar Binks did nothing wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, he, he was only following orders there.
yes,
Always two there are.
yes.
Always two says there is.
Oh yes, oh yes, sir.
Um, the other one is I think there's like something about the nerd psychology where once you decide you like something, you want to know every single thing possible about it.
Yeah.
Like like I remember, so there was like a detail about uh, so I've talked recent weeks a lot about BattleTech and MechWarrior, because a friend of mine online happened to bring it up to me, so I've been getting back into it, which is part of what inspired my last couple things of the week there.
Mm.
And the BattleTech universe, okay, so like Star Wars and Star Trek, I would say like they're kind of original creations. Like there's references in them, but they aren't. There's not a lot of okay expanded universe Star Wars. There's some goofy stuff in there, but the actual like primary media is usually pretty takes itself mostly seriously, right?
Right. Yeah.
Star Wars Holiday Special being an early exception.
Yeah. Yeah.
BattleTech as a universe has always not been afraid to have stupid references all over the
Mm.
place. Like there was a planet called Lum after the alien from Urusei Yatsura. Um, they had minor states that were just the Umayyad Caliphate, but in space, and literally just called the Umayyad Caliphate a real life Spanish king. Yeah, I believe Spanish Muslim kingdom.
Yeah.
Um, but like the thing with BattleTech is that since it was a board game slash video game series where you would have literally hundreds of mech and vehicle designs, they got very they occasionally let themselves get kind of crazy with the lore for some of these things. Um,
Yeah.
one of my favorite ones that I remember was that for a particular type of tank, uh, so tanks you have to like control the tension of the treads,
Mm.
or else things break down because a tank tread is a bunch of wheels that are keeping a thing moving around them. So you have to have like
Right.
just the right tension.
Yeah.
And for the particular model of tank, somebody had noticed that Faro Beer's unique pyramidal beer can was the perfect size to measure the tank the track tension, but only if it was a fresh can.
Uh,
So alicorn crews are always very enthusiastic about carrying out maintenance.
yeah.
Like,
Uh,
there's no like that's never going to come up in a novel or a video game, but that detail is there. So multiply that by hundreds, and it's like even if you don't like, I would buy technical readouts and come to the end of it and conclude, I don't really like most of these mechs, but the lore is interesting.
yeah. I think what's another kind of going back to the point of like knowing, wanting to know everything. I think these franchises, what they do is they inspire us.
Hmm.
They inspire our imagination. They inspire our creativity. Um, and the characters in the franchise are inspirational as well.
Hmm.
We whether we look at characters like Luke Skywalker, like James T. Kirk, or uh, uh, pick whatever, pick any Star Trek or Star Wars character that you like, or any from any franchise, and we kind of we admire them, and we want to you know we might even fantasize about being them. It's just
Hmm.
it's a it kind of brings out the child in us, basically.
Yeah, and like what kid could watch Spider-Man swinging around the city and not imagine what that would be like?
Oh yeah.
Spider-Man might be, as far as like superhero movement styles go, might be the most unique of them all because up until then, you either were driving around in a mobile or you were where you were flying, right, or had a
Right.
right in
Yeah.
some sort of invisible plane.
Yeah.
But Spider-Man's unique. The whole
Yeah.
web swinging thing. It's like that's I would have loved to hear Stan Lee and Steve Ditko hashing that out.
Yeah. Like, well, how does he move around? Well, he swings around on a web through the buildings. Oh,
Okay, but what
that's
happens when, aren't there going to be huge streams of web all over the place? It dissolves after an hour. Shut up.
yeah.
So I think that like for our franchise we're discussing here, it's like it sparks the imagination, but there's also a way for you to participate with it.
right.
Because like every series we've mentioned here, there was not only like the primary media, but there's also video games, novels, spin-off comics. In the case of BattleTech, a board game.
Yeah.
It's like there were ways for you to fill your time with it in between waiting for major releases,
Yeah.
whatever the primary media happened to be.
Yeah. And Ninja says for him it's Spider-Man, late '80s X-Men, and the New Mutants were my teen fandom that stuck with me to adulthood, and Moon Knight as well.
Yeah, X-Men, man.
Yeah.
Like you want to talk about a series that was all consuming for me. When I was in 1994, my mom actually was willing to make a Wolverine cake to celebrate his 30th birthday. No, no, 20th birthday at the
Sorry.
time.
All right.
Like I was Wolverine was my guy
Oh yeah.
when I was a kid.
Yeah. 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 I liked them too. Yeah.
It's like, well, X Men is that ensemble cast. I think that you could argue that Wolverine was the main character of X Men in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah. Especially the animated series. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like yeah, there's just something about like, it, and looking back on it, did you ever have any of those Scholastic X Men books, like the ones where they were basically retelling comic stories from like 5, 10 years earlier?
I might have. I can't remember.
I am kind of amazed in retrospect how close they were allowed to be to the original comics.
Hmm.
Like, because they were just novelettes, but like, are you familiar with the story of Soren and Mariko? Not Soren and Mariko, excuse me. It's Melody of Logan and Mariko, where like her dad was a crime boss, and he had to
Yeah.
learn the way of the samurai to become worthy of her.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Was it with the Silver Samurai?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
her brother.
Yeah.
You know, sidebar. Everyone says that nobody comes, or everybody comes back in comics. Mariko, they've been surprisingly willing to stay dead and unexplored.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But that's either here nor there. Um, so uh, they were. I guess that's another way they get the meat hooks into is that those Scholastic book sales, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's like it's like you just take your medium and you just adapt it into as many, or you take your content and put in as many media as possible. Because if you just have somebody who, I'll pick up the occasional issue of X-Men, that's there for them. But if it's something that gets its hooks into you and you just keep on going with it, like as long as there's something to consume, you'll consume it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah. And might actually be a pretty good lesson for the two of us with our own franchises.
Yep.
As soon
Although
as
it's
we get
harder to come up with that constant treadmill when it's just the two of us,
that's true. Yeah.
but having multiple ways for somebody to like you is always helpful.
Yes.
Now, are there series that you used to be huge into that just for whatever reason have lost you? We'll leave Star Wars off the table because we have talked that one to death.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. The only one I could probably think of, um, is probably the Halo franchise.
Yeah, Halo I want to keep liking, but I actually didn't even mind Halo 5 as much as other people did. But there's a phenomenon where it's like, where a story doesn't feel real anymore.
Yeah.
As soon as I feel like as soon as you've lost that with the audience, like as soon as the story is like, okay, soup's done, or yeah, toast me, soup, or check please, check please.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking soup's on for some reason, but check please.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you have that check please moment with a franchise, it's very hard to come back.
Yeah. I hate to say it, I kind of had that with Halo. It was probably Halo 4.
Yeah, Halo 4, stupid snipers. The, the Halo campaigns with and their bullshit jackal snipers have just been
Yeah.
it,
And they're invincible too. It seems like no matter how many times you shoot them, nothing
yeah, they just
happens.
kind of rock back a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, God.
I'm
Yeah.
going to stop trying to make you angry.
Okay. Okay.
I can't see you right now because my screen's black, but I can feel the annoyance coming through my headphones.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I think the other one that I can think of where I was kind of big into it for a little bit, but then it lost me was Ruby.
Mm, yeah.
Although I think that the problem with Ruby, like so Ruby had a number of so at the time. Okay, so one of my things was that just from what I thought of the characters and their preferred relationships, like I don't want to say like I was shipping anybody, but I had a very strong non-ship. Like,
Uh,
don't get these two characters together. It's stupid. Don't do it. And season 6, I got the spoiler that they did it. Right around the same time that Kick Vic happened, and they replaced him on the character of Crow, who was like my favorite, probably because he was Wolverine-ish, as far as Ruby would let you be.
yeah.
And so it's like at that moment, it's just like, well, I tried to watch an episode, and you ever have a hard time like this is entertaining, this is supposed to be entertaining,
Hmm.
but it feels like it's just dull and slow, and you can't be bothered.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that lack of magic.
Yeah, and that tends to happen with, especially with a TV show that's been on for a long time.
Yeah, like it's definitely like the Simpsons has gotten, as an example of a long running TV show, The Simpsons has gotten better in the last couple seasons than it's been, but it's not. It's more like it's good because of drama, not because of quotable, funny moments.
Yeah, yeah. It's and Ninja says channel awesome for him.
Oh
Reasons that I'm no longer a fan is that I grew up.
yeah, yeah. There are things that just don't follow you, right?
Yeah.
Like Ninja Turtles. I would say like Ninja Turtles. I haven't been super invested in like 20-ish years at this point.
Hmm.
But it's not like I had like a moment of blow up where I was like, you know what, f you guys, you destroyed the franchise. I want out. It was
Yeah.
more just like I grew up and discovered more complex media.
Yeah. Yeah. Ninja Turtles is one that I would say I kind of go the way the franchise goes, where it's like it goes up, and then it kind of peters out, and then it kind of has this roller coaster thing. That's kind of the way I am with it. I'll get into it for a while, and then I'll fall out of it, and then I'll get into it and fall out of it. And it's, yeah,
So long troughs in between.
right, yeah,
Have you
and
read that comic book they came out with,
oh, I
Ronin?
got that. Yeah,
I have it. I haven't read it yet though, and I need to.
the Last Ronin.
Last Ronin, yeah.
You're gonna be surprised at who the Last Ronin is.
I've unfortunately had it spoiled.
Okay.
But to be fair, when I heard who it was, I was like, of course that's who you'd have be the last guy. It'd be too obvious for it to be the one. It'd be too obvious for it to be the other.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm speaking in vague here.
yes,
So it's like there are really only two options if you wanted it to be interesting.
right, yeah. And Chengus asks you, you don't like Cat Girl and Blonde Girl?
Yeah, that was the one. I basically, I always thought that was like an awful relationship. And it's also like, why did they bother having the character of Son exist if he wasn't Blake's love interest?
uh,
Um, and for that matter, the what poor Son just or yeah, poor Son just followed her around like a little puppy for 2 seasons.
ugh, uh,
The like I really thought about it. If I would actually be would have been more interested in okay if they'd paired up Weiss with Yang,
uh,
like just because that would have been more of like a contrast. Because Blake really doesn't have a personality when you get down to it. Her personality is she can't go anywhere without people falling in love with her. She has had at least as of like the first 5 6 seasons that I actually bothered to watch, 4 different characters were interested in her.
oh, jeez. Oh, man.
Counting Yang. So it's like 2 guys, 2 girls. It's like,
Well,
does she just have does she just have harem energy? I don't know.
maybe, yeah.
Oh, although speaking of lesbians, the other series that really just lost me all at once, even though it didn't have a narrative, was Overwatch.
Oh, yeah.
Partially because it felt like there should have been a more interesting universe there, but there just wasn't.
Yeah, that's a wasted potential.
Right? Like, where's the Netflix show? League of Legends got a Netflix show.
Yeah.
The moment where that broke me, I'd been kind of falling behind on the game for a while. Like my friends were still playing it, but I'd kind of gotten out. Um, was the moment they introduced the hamster.
The hamster.
Look him up. I would if I had access to my screen right now.
Okay. Alright,
Like he does not match the rest of that universe. He is a mutant hamster and a giant roly ball robot.
okay. Oh, what?
And that was the exact moment where I went, okay, this is not a real series.
This is this is like it's like Scrappy Doo.
Yeah. And so just like I'm out. Nope, sorry, not interested anymore. I remember I even tried to read the comic books and they always felt fake.
Yeah.
I think that the feeling of fakeness is you can almost tell when something like nothing interesting is going to be allowed to happen in a story. Because if something interesting happened in a story, that would, have impacts on the lore, and they got to keep the lore ready for when they eventually want to do something with it.
Yeah.
Which 7 years on,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and Ninja brings up a great point. Overwatch should have had a story mode from the get go.
yeah, instead of canceling on Overwatch 2, which boy, that's a blow.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Considering that was the stated reason for canceling Overwatch 1 in favor of Overwatch 2.
Oh yeah.
Daniel, did were you super familiar with that one?
Not really. No.
Okay, so the funny thing to me about Overwatch is that in retrospect, they accidentally should have. Basically, every time they did a story event, like they would have a mission that you could play for a couple of weeks that was like, oh, here's the flashback to Tracer's first mission fighting these robots, and oh, it's a flashback to Reaper's days in the Black Watch or whatever they were called.
Uh,
And what occurs to me in retrospect is that okay, if all the interesting stuff is set in the past, why is your story set in the quote unquote present?
yeah.
Because the backstory of Overwatch is basically a superhero team that has to fight robots who are trying to conquer the Earth, like a race of Reploids or whatever,
Mm,
Omnics, I think they called them, who tried to conquer the world. And in the course of that war, like Reaper got almost killed, and he got turned into a shadow monster by Mercy trying to keep him alive, and so he became the Magneto of the series.
huh.
Um, so let me ask you this: what would be to stop them from? You don't have villains initially, like, or maybe you have make some omnic villains to people for people to play as. Set it, in the past where all the story ideas you have, and let them unfold over time. Like that would be a fun little status quo change where, like, suddenly all Reaper's like base character design changes. Like,
Yeah.
if you bought the skin, then you can still use the classic skin, but like now when you look at Reaper, he's now the shadow monster instead of being the special forces operative.
Yeah. Mm,
But that might be like the greatest. And I actually noticed that I fell out of love with Overwatch around the same time I fell out of love with Ruby. So I don't know if that was just me finally growing up in some way or a random coincidence.
probably a random coincidence.
Yeah. The other problem with Ruby is that they went from it being something where you could watch the entire season in one night as a movie. I actually went to a theater with a friend once to watch season one,
Uh,
and there were like a couple dozen people around. Some of them were in cosplay, so it was fun.
yeah.
Um, to the episodes became like not quite like it basically became like watching a real anime season. And suddenly, when it's investing your time and asking you to watch weekly like a real anime season, and if you're like me and watching on Crunchyroll, you go, why aren't I just watching an actual anime that's good?
Uh, yeah.
So I think that as I said, I think that some of the commonalities we're coming across here sparks your imagination,
Hmm.
and it's like things that you can participate in somehow.
Right. Yeah, and you've got a lot of secondary sources that where you can really invest yourself into the lore of the franchise and get to know the characters. You get to know the different dynamics. You know, if it's a sci-fi series, the different races and the ships and all that stuff.
Yep. And then like once the spell is broken, it seems like the spell is just broken.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I don't acknowledge what you're doing as canon anymore. Whatever.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, so yeah, to sum it up, yeah, I think a good franchise, like we said, it sparks the imagination, it's inspirational, it catches your attention, captures your imagination, and um, and a good franchise will find a way to keep that going um, through through over a very long period of time.
Right. Which some of them are built for it, some of them aren't.
Yeah.
Like, oh, actually, so the interesting thing about Ninja Turtles that I it came up in a video I was watching. So, Daniel, would you say that your favorite parts of Ninja Turtles are like where it's like the street level stuff against Shredder and the Foot Clan, maybe like the '80s cartoon stuff where it was like that was the status quo was um, actually, no. I think that for a lot of adult Ninja Turtles fans I talk to, or people who remember it fondly, like basically what the first Ninja Turtles movie was is like their ideal Ninja Turtles.
I would say so, yeah.
And yet, going back to the comics, they always go into the cosmic stuff, which always seems to lose people whenever they do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah, that part of it was kind of freaky, and also the time travel stuff.
Yeah, like there was a review series on the 2003 show, and it's like as soon as they had, they had the time travel season and they had the Triceraton invasion. It just sounds like the popularity slipped because what people kind of want from the series is that, sort of Batman Daredevil grade stuff just with giant anthropomorphic turtles.
Right. Yeah.
That may be part of why when we did our trailer review that we were as positive on the movie as we were once we knew more about it
Yeah.
because it's playing in that zone.
Yeah, I would say that's very true, and it's yeah, it's more with Batman, Daredevil, and with the anthropomorphic turtles and other mutants. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe sometimes maybe you just have maybe your series is just it has a limited shelf appeal and attempts to keep it going are just gonna be like introducing the Great Gazoo to the Simpsons or to
Right.
the
Yeah.
Flintstones.
Yeah. And yeah, Ninja says TMNT is a franchise that manages to keep successfully rebranding itself.
That's the other thing is that Ninja Turtles doesn't necessarily follow you as you age. It's just it's always willing to okay, it's been 5 or 10 years. Time to get the next group of 8-year-olds.
Yeah. Well,
Last Ronin being like the only adult one I can think of that they've come out with.
yeah, that sounds about right. Well,
Uh, Well, that was interesting because
yeah.
it was kind of similar to what I was suspecting would be the answer, but um, well, I've learned from among other things that there are way more Star Trek games than I was aware of.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've exhausted this topic.
Yes.